Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J Moore Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you tuning in for the first time or those who are regular watchers, if you have any questions for my guest or myself, just type it into the comments section. You'll see me turn my head from time to time to check and see. Since we're in summer is heating up, and Jmore is here to help. Plan your trip with Jmore's special Maryland travel section, highlighting local attractions, events, and itineraries. Visit jmoreliving.com/travel to learn more about Maryland's scenic byways, the state's ice cream trail, and more. Today's guest is Stacey Woodson, also known as the Earth-Centered Dietitian. She has a Bachelor of Science in Biology from Hampton University, a Bachelor of Science in Dietetics from LaSalle University, and a Master's of Science in Clinical Nutrition from New York University. Stacey specializes in using food as medicine. She fuses nutrition, nature, and cultural foods with an anti-diet approach while teaching her clients to eat foods that improve health and bring them joy. Let's bring in Stacey.
Hello.
Hi. I cut you off, folks. I was talking about cinnamon and the benefits. We'll come back to that if we have time. But there are benefits, and we'll come back to it. Okay. So, Stacey, what's on your plate today, other than doing the show?
Let's see. I'm doing camp pickups and drop-offs. That's been a lot of my summer. So I have 3 kids going in different directions. I have a one-on-one client, and I had a meeting about doing some nutrition workshops for grandparents raising their grandkids.
That sounds very interesting. Talking about grandparents, tell me a bit about your family and your family table.
Sure. So I am married, and I am a homeschool mom of 3. So I have 2 daughters and a son. I shared with you briefly before the show started that I'm originally from Ohio, but I currently reside and have resided in Philadelphia. Go Birds, for many years now. My husband's family was from Philly. Like, he's born and raised in West Philadelphia. He actually grew up about 6 blocks from where we live. My family is from either the Philadelphia area or the surrounding suburbs in like Ardmore or Norristown.
So, what was growing up, siblings? What was your family table like?
So that's very interesting because my my biological father, my father, died when I was young,
I'm
and
sorry to
my
hear that.
mother went on to have children later. And so I do have children. I do have sisters, but they're significantly younger than me. So for the most of my childhood, it was just me. And then my oldest baby sister was born when I was 15. And then my other baby sister was born my freshman year in college. And I just happened to be home when she was born because it was Christmas break. So for the most part, it was just me. And in my very early years, they called me the human garbage disposal because I've always loved food and I would eat anything. But I did have a handful of things that I just didn't like and would not touch. And most of those things have not changed.
Really? Tell me one. Just curious.
One is cheese. So I
Yeah.
don't like cheese. I will eat certain cheeses in certain ways. So for instance, I like a mild cheese to accompany like something else, but I won't eat it by itself. So like I'll eat pizza. I will eat provolone on a sandwich maybe. But I could live without cheese.
Are you lactose intolerant by any chance? Or it's just,
No.
no?
I
Okay.
mean, honestly, I don't really know because I don't have enough lactose in my diet
Okay.
to have an
Okay.
issue. But I would, it's been since childhood. I've never liked dairy products. I also don't drink cow's milk.
Okay. And I understand that. Okie dokie. So, Why the title Earth-Centered Dietitian?
Well, I have a lot of different hats that I wear in dietetics. So I have been a registered dietitian for about 20 years. And maybe about 10, 15 years ago, I started growing food. And this was by happenstance. I used to say before that I had a black thumb because I tried to grow all types of things. I live in truly in an urban neighborhood. So I live in West Philadelphia. I live in a row home. So I have no like grass in my property. I have a little cement plot in the back and cement in the front. And so I was trying to do things in like pots and the squirrels would get them or I'd forget about them. Like I'd never water my watermelon. And then one of my neighbors invited me to go to the community garden, a community garden that's maybe about 5 blocks from my house. And I was just absolutely amazed that I had multiple degrees in nutrition, but I didn't really understand or know where food came from. And from there, I just got so interested in growing food. And I feel like if you're naturally curious and you're thinking about foods that you grow, you then start to wonder like these things that are just popping up that you didn't purposely plant. Like what are they? Do they have any do they have any benefits? So then I became very interested in like foraging and was just blown away when a lot of the things that naturally grow in your garden bed or around your garden bed had medicinal or just they were edible. And from there, I kind of started getting like what you would call real crunchy and just, talking to trees and walking barefoot and grounding. And I didn't initially bring that into my practice, but when people started having questions about it, I was like, ooh, like this is something that I didn't think I had enough knowledge to bring into my practice. But after a while, I was like, I don't have to be an expert in it to talk about the benefits of some of these behaviors or talking about wild food, like I like to call them wild edible food. And then I started mixing in, I also got very interested in how different cultures use foods, which is referred to as ethnobotany, or how they use plants. And so once I
Okay.
brought in the agricultural piece and the ethnobotany piece, and I like to make what I call kitchen medicine or kitchen remedies. So using things that you already have in your kitchens, lemons, spices, ginger, to make medicine. Once I brought in that kitchen medicine, I was just like, all of this is very centered on the earth. So that's where the terminology came from.
I was curious, and you talked about urban gardening. In Britain, they have a lot of community gardens. They really do. And the urban gardening, I mean, Baltimore, Philadelphia, I'm sure there are definitely food deserts in Baltimore. I'm sure you have it in Philadelphia.
Absolutely.
And by bringing these community gardens together, I know that they've been taking off here. I'm sure you're seeing the same thing in Philadelphia. Um, what was I going to ask? There was something. Oh, so the gardens, there's an organization that no longer exists, the American Institute of Wine and Food. I used to be part of it. But we had a program called Days of Taste.
Mm,
And that's where the chefs came and taught in schools about salad and greens. And students from urban centers have no concept of where food comes from. They don't understand. I'm preaching to the choir here. So I'm opening the door to you to address um, the work that you do with children and the books you write.
sure. So the first thing that I will say is I do a lot of garden workshops and they're so much fun. And when you said tasting different greens, I actually have one of the, I'm a member of a swim club and we happen to have a community, well, a garden for the swim club. And we have workshops every month. And the one that I have coming up next week is called Go Green. Go Greens. And we're going to talk about different greens and the history of the greens, a little bit about the greens themselves, like their nutrition benefits. But I'm going to have them sample the different greens to kind of see which types of profiles that you like, whether it's more bitter, whether it's more spicy. So I love doing garden programming. I love to talk about how there is no such thing as an actual vegetable. Like that's really a human construct, because when you have a plant, you're eating certain parts of the plant and you're calling it a vegetable, right? So maybe it's the leaves, if you're talking about kale or collards or Swiss chard, or sometimes you're eating the roots, potatoes, beets. So people don't often realize where the culinary piece meets the science, which meets the agriculture. So I like kind of fusing all that together, especially when I talk to kids, because you can just see like their mind like explode, like, wait, the bean that I'm eating is really a seed. So I call that thinking like a chef, thinking like a farmer, or thinking like a scientist. And I always say, which hat are we wearing today? Like, which one are we putting on when we call, a cucumber a fruit? Are we thinking like a farmer, or are we thinking like a scientist, right? And so I kind of, those questions that people have. So botanically, a cucumber is indeed a fruit, but when we think of it in nutritional science, it aligns more with a traditional vegetable, like a green leafy vegetable. So we call it a vegetable. So then we're thinking like a scientist.
I saw in one of your videos, and everybody, all the information about Stacey will come up in the comments section, so you can click in. But if you can spell Stacey Woodson, what you're seeing under her name right here, put a .com on that, you can go to her website. And there's a lot of information there and how you can connect with her if you want to bring her in as a speaker. She does it all. She, writes for magazines. She's there for the kids. The books you write for the kids or the children, and it's a series of books. The one I like, The Princess of Picky Eating Tries New Food. And I think you came out again then with a Prince of Picky Eating Tries New Food. Then there's an activity book. What is a good tip? Now, I know you had a child who was a picky eater. I was a picky eater when I was young. Any tips for families with young kids who are picky eaters? I had a friend whose son only ate cereal.
Yes, I have lots of tips. So just so you know, this series is loosely based off of my real life. So I have the Princess of Picky Eating. Her name is Sloan, which is my daughter's name. So the my children's book series actually has my family illustrated into the series. And it was inspired by my daughter. When she was like 2, she used to eat fine before she was 2. When she was 2, she stopped eating all the things she used to eat. And I remember thinking, like, I have multiple degrees in this. I can only imagine what other people that have like no nutritional background are going through. I would love to write a story about this, like a funny story about this. But it was one of those things that you just said and you never thought you would do. Right. And then flash forward. So she's now 11. So I first came up with this idea when she was 2, and I published the book maybe when she was about 8. So flash forward to the pandemic. So this was a pandemic project, and The Princess of Picky Eating is actually the first book in the series. And some friends that I had met in my homeschool community had published books. And one of them had, there was this free children's book masterclass happening online, and she had tagged me in the post. I signed up because it was free, and what was I doing? Nothing. We were all at home. But I really didn't plan on attending, and I just happened to get an alert on my phone. And I attended, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I can actually bring this book to life. So that's kind of like the history behind the series. And once again, I mentioned I had 3 kids, so I knew if I wrote a book about one kid, I was going to need a series. Like, you can't just write a book about one of your children and the other 2 were like, what? That's not fair. So I knew right off the bat it was going to be a series. But my best information to parents and caregivers, anyone who's trying to feed a child and their child is very picky, is I always like to remind people that as adults, there's things that we're uncomfortable doing. And it's very much the same for kids when they're trying new foods, right? They they don't have the knowledge that we have, that it's not dangerous. They just have that nervous system reaction. And so one, we want to start off slow and small, meaning, you might give them a pile of peas, right? That's a lot. So it's overwhelming. So you might just put 2 or 3 peas on the plate, right? And they may not eat it, and that's okay. Every experience we have with a food, and it's not traumatic, it lets the child know that these foods are safe to be around. So sometimes the answer is just to make sure those foods that you want your kid to eat or children to eat is that they're around, that they have experiences with them, and eventually they might get curious. The other piece of advice that I would say is not, I find that when you offer a child food, maybe once or twice, they don't like it, you stop offering it because food is expensive and you don't want to waste your time and money. But it can take as many as 15 or more exposures with a food before a child can like officially decide that they don't like a food. So is to keep offering those things and making sure that you're eating those foods that you want the children to eat.
I can tell you a story about my father and raw oysters. As a child, I'd see him eat the raw oysters. I go, Daddy, can I try that? And he'd give it to me. And I go, bah. And the next time I go, bah. And then finally I went, yum. It's the parents definitely set the tone for children in what they eat. And your tips are very handy, and they're more. And everybody, StaceyWoodson.com. You can buy the books there. They're great. I saw a YouTube. Now, this might be your youngest child who did Grow, Eat, and Repeat.
Oh, that's my oldest daughter.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tells, it's not only you took her to the garden, your garden. Tell the story. You're going to do it a whole lot better than me.
Right. So this story was co-authored with my oldest daughter when she's 10. She's almost 14. And once again, each one of the books, my children are a main character. And I'm currently working on my son's book, just so you know. So my kids are the main character, and I wanted them to feel very much like their personalities. So once again, the first one was about my daughter, who is truly the princess of picky eating. Although she does try new foods now. She's still picky, but tries more. And then my oldest daughter, it's one of those things, as the oldest, you want time with your parents by yourself, but there's always these little siblings that are around. And so my oldest daughter would always be the one when I was like, oh, I want to go to the garden, and you guys want to help me water? Do you want to help me weed? And they're like, no. But she would go with me. So I was like, oh, this could be a perfect way for me to have her book. And so that was kind of like the story behind it. And so it's a little girl who doesn't necessarily enjoy going to the garden, but she does it just to spend alone time with her mom. And while they're there, they learn some fascinating history and about science. So this one is more of like my upper elementary. It's geared towards that age. And when they're in the garden, her Paige, which is my daughter's name, Paige is asking her mom about these black-eyed pea plants. And the mother, me, in the story explains how they're her favorite plant to grow, and they go through the history and how black-eyed peas were brought here from enslaved Africans, and how they were grown by her parents in the story. So their maternal line had grown these plants, and it's kind of a little bit of a time jump. And I have that illustrated by there's like a timeline in the story where you can see the different ancestors in the story, or the different generations, because we're kind of go back in time, but we tell the story. So Paige's mom is telling her the story of the past, so she can kind of track what happened with their family. And she was saying that Paige's great-grandmother used to grow food and lived in Virginia and during the Black migration. So it's also a little bit of a history lesson. They moved up north. And then her daughter, so Paige's grandmother, didn't want to grow food. She wanted to be a seamstress. So she let that go. But eventually Paige's grandmother, mom, or her great-grandmother, passed away. And her daughter, Paige's grandmother, found these seeds, which happened to be heirloom seeds. And she decided to grow them just to be connected with her mother. And when she did that, she just fell in love. And so from then on, she taught her children how to grow food. And that's where the grow, eat, repeat is that, you know, she was using these seeds to grow. They were able to feed themselves, but also save some, and they were able to repeat the cycle. So the story ends when Paige is an adult and a grandmother herself, and she's passing on this legacy to her grandchildren.
I think the story, well, it tells a lot about the culture and how the slaves that were brought here embedded the seeds within their brains, because not knowing where they're going to be, if there's going to be anything to eat. And that's just one story probably out of 1,000 from the slaves and what they did to survive. But it gives a parent a chance to sit there and talk with their child and discuss how their family relates to your family and the person in the book. You did a talk, and I'm going to tell everybody, encourage you to go to staceywoodson.com. There is a video up there. Stacey did a talk about nutritional labels you must hear. You think you read them, but do you understand them? I got a kick out of it, and everybody can relate to it. Serving sizes would feed probably a small, minuscule child. Tell the story about ice cream.
So this story is that video is so old that I don't remember exactly the story about ice cream that you're talking about. But I will say, when it comes to ice cream, the nutrition labels have changed a little bit as of, I want to say, 2020. They have to have a little bit clearer labels. But generally what I tell people is that the pints of ice cream that people will eat in one serving, there used to be many servings on there. So unless you were specifically looking to and knew that there were multiple servings in that container, you would assume that it was meant to eat in one sitting, and you would be eating like 1,000 calories easily.
Right. So, you know, the pint of ice cream is 1,000 calories. None of us have sat down and had 1/4 of a pint of Ben and Jerry's or Haagen-Dazs or Graters. You know, how many people have sat down and eaten that whole pint?
Right. Or at least
but
a
they
half.
say,
at
they
the
say
very
the
least.
serving size is 250 calories. And I think in there you said nutrition is not one size fits all.
I say that a lot. It's not. Right. And so I think that's one of the reasons why people get so frustrated with nutrition, is that they hear one thing and they start doing it and it doesn't work for them. And then they try something else, you know, that their sister or their cousin or their best friend told them. And I always remind people that everybody has different nutrition goals. And so if your goal is to manage blood sugar versus to run a marathon versus to, I don't know, just to feel better, to sleep better, all of those are going to have very different nutrition actions and goals. And so if you're following somebody else's recommendations that are looking to achieve something else, then it's not going to work out the way that you think. So you really have to peel back, like, why am I doing these things? And your why might not match the activities. Yeah.
One of the things that came about on labeling on a recent show with Dr. Rebecca Bevins, who did a TED Talk on synthetic food dyes. And there's new government things coming down about red dye number 3, blah, blah, blah. imported foods don't quite have the labeling. And we were talking about Dubai bar, and I had gone and gotten the Dubai bar. It was on sale for $9.99, big savings. But when I came home, this was right after Dr. Bevins was on. Instead of having yellow number 6, it had the technical name. So European people might not label the same way. So it might, let's say the word is titanium for yellow number 3. That's a technical term. So, and I looked, and here on the bar, imported, were all the technical names rather than blue number 3, green number 4. You didn't know that the synthetic dyes were in there. Have you seen any improvement by imported foods over the years coming in and what they're labeling?
I have to say, that's not something that now when I deal a lot more with like international foods. Over the years, I didn't deal with international foods as much, but I do think that labeling is one of those things that's very tricky. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you're almost just lost in the sauce. So I definitely think there'll be some labeling changes, and hopefully they'll be for the better. I can't say that I'm 100% sure. I do say though, if this is something that you want to know more about, you definitely want to either follow somebody that is very knowledgeable about them, work with somebody that knows about labeling, because it is not what you assume that it would be. I even tell people like front of the package labelings, just because something says that it's reduced sodium doesn't mean it's low sodium, right?
Right.
People don't realize that to wear what I call wear on the front of the package is a label like that. It just means that there is a product, that an original product, and it means that it's 25% less sodium than the original. Doesn't mean that it's low in sodium at all.
Well, you do a lot of these talks about what you're reading on a package, and I think you do grocery shopping tours, so I'm sure that is part and parcel with that. I saw that you did on one of the Philadelphia TV stations. They brought you in about biodynamic soil, consuming
Oh, the
the
crunching.
soil, the crunching. So you want to cover that? Obviously, where your product grows, how it's grown affects the nutrition. Do you have any pointers or things that you'd like to add on that?
So I'll just briefly, for people that don't know about biodynamic soil and crunching. So it was like a TikTok trend that came out maybe a few months ago, and people were eating soil. And they were saying that their health had improved and done all of these different things. Now, once again, I mentioned that I'm an urban gardener, so I can appreciate the benefits of making sure that food is grown in very rich soil. We know that people that even get their hands in the soil or eat more foods that are grown in soil that's purposely cared for, like a regenerative type of process,
Right.
are exposed to more beneficial bacteria, and that is good for our gut. The more variety of bacteria we have, we see better immune function, better mood, like all these different things. So eating food from nutrient-rich soil is going to be very important. Now, I cannot endorse eating soil like they were encouraging.
Right.
So I'm not going to do that. I yes, I just wouldn't encourage that. But when we think of soil, it is definitely important to make sure that when we're getting our produce, we do the best. Well, first I'll say we do the best that we can with what we have. And so if we are somebody that is struggling to feed ourselves, we're going to make sure that we get produce in whatever capacity that we can. If we're privileged enough to have the disposable income to be a little bit more picky, my recommendation is to make sure that you're looking at local and small farmers. because they really care, or I can't say generally, but most small farmers really care about the health of their soil. And they're
Right.
going to do the type of practices that make sure when they have things that are what we call like heavy feeders, takes a lot from the soil, things like tomatoes, for example, that they rotate where they're growing these things. So for instance, things like beans, they're nitrogen fixers. So when we grow those, it puts nitrogen back in the soil. So they're thinking about things like that. They're not over harvesting. And we do know that it's going to affect the nutrients in the produce that we eat, the quality of the soil that it's grown in.
Well, I remember, it's funny, I don't remember much from my childhood, but I remember that you rotate, as a farmer, you rotate your crops. So the soil is always replenishing itself and you're not over draining it from the nutrients. I did the fancy food show just like a week ago.
I was there too.
We probably walked by each other. So, all right, what did you walk away with? Tell me what blew your mind at the fancy
Um,
food show?
so I'm always interested. I go there for a variety of reasons, but I love to see like food trends, like what's hot, what to expect. And so for me, because I work in the world of like growing, or so many things that come from the earth, most of what I talk about is plant-based stuff. And I always like to tell people that I don't have a problem with people choosing to eat meat. It's just my focus is always getting people to eat more plant-based foods, because that's an area that most people need to eat more of. So I was there specifically looking at plant-based things, and I saw some great like alternatives, like meat alternatives. You know, there's a lot of them on the market, but with ingredients that are recognizable. So I saw a lot of that. I saw a lot of mushroom products, which I always find fascinating. What else did I see a lot of? Those are the two that are coming to mind right now.
There
But
were
there
a
was like,
lot more healthy
mm-hmm,
alternative foods, where the foods were geared to putting out a better quality product,
mm-hmm.
or some of them that money goes back to the growers. There's a lot of that. What there wasn't a lot of was waters.
No, there wasn't.
It used to be you'd get a water here or water there. And for those, it was at the Javits Center in New York. The top floor, called the River Pavilion, was all developed new products under auspices of some of the colleges, whether it be, I can't think of their names right now, but different products that are coming out, emerging companies. And that was fascinating. That's where I spent the first day, almost the whole entire time, talking to people. Um, Water. There isn't as much water. I know that you did a YouTube, something you talked about water. And do you recommend that people filter their water at home?
Um, I like filtered water. I think that there's definitely benefits from filtering water if you live in a place where your water supply is quote unquote clean. So like not in Flint, then I'm not as much of a stickler, but I
Right.
particularly like the taste of filtered water. But I also like the idea that there are certain things that are in our water
Yeah.
supply that can be beneficial. So filtering the water can take out the things that we don't want, leaving some of the things that we do want.
Right.
But spring water is also very refreshing and delicious and has minerals. So there's so many different ways to go. I think the important thing is that people are making sure that they're hydrated.
Right. And brings me, this is hot weather time. Any tips for keeping hydrated?
Absolutely. So I will never, ever tell people not to drink what I like to call is still water. Like the conversation that we're having is please, if that's how you enjoy drinking your water, please do. But I'm a big fan, and this goes back to my earth-centeredness, of getting a twofer. And so if we can consume fruit or something else that's hydrating, our fruits and vegetables, and you think of the summer produce, a lot of them have a very high water content. And we know you can get about 20% of your hydration needs met with food, which most people don't realize. So making sure that we're eating those foods, because we're not just going to get the hydration, we're going to get the vitamins and minerals and fiber when we do that as well. And also, I think if it's really hot, adding a pinch of salt to our water, which is a natural electrolyte, can help you actually utilize that water that we're bringing in. A lot of people will drink tons of plain water and notice that it just runs right out of them. That pinch of salt can help actually your body to utilize it, to pull it into the cells and use it for support. And the other piece that I always tell people if they're into it is this is also another way to add like some type of tea, like a herbal tea blend, so we can get the benefits of the herb if we're steeping it in water. And so we get the water, that hydration in, but also some of the benefits of the herbs. And so some of my favorites that if that was something that people wanted to consider would be oat straw. So coming from the same plant as oatmeal, but very nourishing, very mild tasting. So oat straw and nettles, like stinging nettles. Those are two of my favorites that I encourage people if they wanted to go down that route to try.
So this is something they might find through the farmers.
You absolutely could find this anywhere that sells herbs. I mean, you could get it off of Amazon if you wanted to.
Okay.
But it is going to be, when you think of loose tea, it would be similar to that, where you'd put it in like a something and steep it in water. And then you get a little bit more minerals and some hydration.
I feel like I could probably go on talking to you to the benefit of the people who watch this, but it has come that time for my final questions.
Okay.
And people want to learn more. StaceyWoodson.com. All the connects are going to be up in the comments section, but you'll find it through her website and all the other links. All right. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, don't take life so serious. I was one of those, like, I got to get good grades to get to college so I can get a good job, and just live your youth. It goes fast.
I agree with you there. If you wake up tomorrow morning with a new talent, what would the new talent be?
Organizational skills. So I have many skills, but organizing is not one of them.
Okay. So are any of your kids good at that? That you tapped into?
My oldest daughter is the best. The other two, they could use those skills too.
Okay. What are two musts in your refrigerator?
I love so much variety. The must in my fridge would probably be because of my kids. And right now, the protest would be if there was no yogurt or sourdough.
Okay. I'm assuming that you cook. So
I do.
any epic culinary fail you care to share?
Oh, so my biggest culinary fail was actually when I just started cooking. So this was almost like 20 years ago. And I decided that I was going to make this tortilla soup. And it smelled wonderfully. And you know how when something smells so good and you're just salivating, yes, waiting for it. And it tasted like nothing. I was so disappointed. I was like, how can something smell so good and taste not like anything?
Did you ever figure out what the problem was?
I didn't. I gave up on that recipe. I was so disappointed.
Well, we can't blame it on AI recipes at the moment.
You can't. No. Way before AI.
Yeah. Can't trust those AI recipes, kiddos. That's a whole other thing for next week. We'll go into that. But didn't I ask you that? I probably should have.
That's a great question. Ooh, I love to talk about the way that we describe food. So that's something that's big that I talk about. And I invite people to, instead of calling foods good or bad or unhealthy or healthy, is to really look at them through a lens of what they do for our body. This is great language to use with kids. And so the example that I always give is, if you have a piece of broccoli, broccoli will give you the hydration that we're talking about, fiber, vitamin A, vitamin C, iron. The list can go on. But if I would ask most people, like, what does candy do for you? Most people would be like, nothing, it's terrible. But I invite you to think of candy would give you energy, right? So it's going to give you energy. And so we don't have to frame it negatively, but kids are very smart and they can see, oh, wow, broccoli does a lot for my body. And candy does one thing. I think broccoli is something that I should eat every day. And candy is something that maybe I can have occasionally. So I
Okay.
care very much about how we describe food.
And this means nothing, but it takes me back years ago when Pocahontas, I don't know why I'm scratching here, when Pocahontas, the movie, was out, and I was doing cooking demos on local TV. So this goes back. And I came in and did a TP. I had broccoli, which I called Clouds in the Sky, which had had the dip. And the TP was a tortilla. And I made up this whole story. But, in saying, presenting food a different way for children, it was going back to school or something. And I had so much fun with that. And then somebody I worked with said, you know what? A girlfriend told me about this episode that she watched or something about. She had watched me and told her. Didn't know that she knew me about Pocahontas. Okay, folks. I probably shouldn't go on there. Stacey, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. Continued success. People, everything she does, she can be a speaker, author. Check her out, staceywoodson.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure, truly my pleasure. Okay, everyone, I want you to feel free to reach out to me via email. My email is food@jmoreliving.com. My Instagram is @DaraCooks. Or on Facebook, I do have a page called the Food Enthusiast, so the show is there as well. Next week's guest will be half of the Cooking with Bruce and Mark podcast team, Bruce Weinstein. The two of them cook through recipes, give hints, and dispel myths. Also, they will make you laugh. Chef Bruce Weinstein, along with his partner Mark Scarborough, are authors of 37 cookbooks, from the ice cream cookbook, 5 Instapot cookbooks, air fryer cookbooks, and now the latest cookbook due out within days of their appearance called Cold Canning Cookbook. So you don't have to go through all the process that can be overwhelming and heating the jars. So Bruce will be on next week, so definitely mark your calendars. You can sign up for J More Living's free This Week in Baltimore Eating newsletter, recipes, local food news, and videos from the Food Enthusiast. Click on the Connect button on the website, J More Living. Click on that, and you can sign up for that. And that comes, I believe, every other week. And all the updates, restaurant news for the Baltimore area. All our shows are immediately archived in video form on J More Living's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. Feel free to go back into our archives and enjoy past shows. I look forward to seeing you next Thursday. May your plates always, always remain full.